Very good, thank you. And thank you to Transcellate for this opportunity to show what we've been able to do with the SDR, both as an upstream provider and then also collaborating with the workflows. So allow me to go ahead and share my quick presentation to give you an introductory view of the approach we've taken based on the use case and upstream use case, what we think is typical. Get this into screen share mode. So the Nurocor Clinical Platform, it's a microservice-based platform that supports digitalized study design and development. As Tom pointed out from Trials AI, it's critical to have the details of the protocol design in fine-grained, semantically rich form so that it can be leveraged. And so we have built that out. What you'll be seeing here is production general availability software that's in production in a number of our customers. As an aside, we are actively developing the next phase of our product to support clinical document authoring, which will leverage the content that you'll be seeing today to support the development of a rich of a clinical document such as the protocol within a rich environment. So the use case that we've set up here, and obviously we can't show all the details given the short amount of time we have available, but the steps that we went through to execute this scenario is that the study owner will create a study via the Nurocor Clinical Platform dashboard. Once that's created, they'll assign users to various editor roles that have the rights to specify study details such as the arm design, interventions, administered products, objectives and endpoints, which are templatized. The point earlier made about being able to search objectives and endpoints, we believe that templatizing those objectives and endpoints is critical to allow for a standardized form of objectives and endpoints to make them searchable. And so that's an important point, and it'd be interesting to explore that in the next Connectathon. We also support the build out of a full fidelity schedule of activities and many other sections within the study design. Once the schedule of activities has been built, the platform will automatically convert that scheduled activities into a casebook rendering, and that's an internal rendering that we then use to drive downstream integrations and extracts. So we can produce an ODM file, we can produce a PDF of an annotated CRF that supports both the collection and the tabulation, or the collection, and the tabulation annotations. And of course, we have ability to integrate with EDCs and SDR, which is the purpose of this today's session. Lastly, then we have a lean protocol capability. It's designed to provide workflow-enabled gates that support incremental and parallelized study planning activities for the study under development. We have configured one of the gates in our default configuration, the data management draft gate, to automatically provision the study design to the SDR once that's approved. So that's what I'll be showing. Graphically, this use case looks something like this. So we'll create the study, we'll complete the sections, we'll generate the casebook, and then lean protocol kicks in. That's when we'll do the post to the SDR. And then with our partners in Oracle, I'll hand over to them after we complete our upstream demo, and then Oracle will show how they are able to get that study from the SDR and retrieve whatever information is necessary to build out the study in their EDC. Also, we have done some work with Oracle to support bidirectional integration independent of the SDR. So that's what that bottom arrow represents. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start demonstrating the capabilities here. So here's the NCP dashboard. This is the study that I'll be using, SDR test 1. You may have noted that IBM was consuming the 2020-103 demo study 02. That was an earlier example we were working with, and we had collaborated with IBM on some of the specifics around that. So, thanks to IBM for working with us on that. I think that produced a nice result for your demonstration. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the lean protocol so we can see the current state of the study. So lean protocol, again, has this notion of gates. Gates feed off of conditions, and these conditions are content sections within the study design. You can see most of these are completed, but there's a number of these that are in progress. So the scheduled activities is not marked as done. The trial arm elements are not marked as done. The administered products not marked as done. The objectives and endpoints are not marked as done, but others aren't complete. This takes a little bit of time. There it is. And this, by clicking this link, I will launch my approval form. By default, we have a very simple approval process. So I'm going to go and indicate that it's ready to do that initial push for a trial run into the SDR, and I'm going to go ahead and approve that. As soon as I hit submit, that's going to kick off the dedicated microservice we have built for SDR integration. That's going to retrieve the casebook. It's going to produce the SDR content and do the post into SDR. So that's going to take a few seconds. There's a bit of processing required there. And we will then wait for that to show up, that notification to show up. There it is. So the notification that is returned gives us two links. First of all, I have a very simple link that just retrieves the full SDR build from the repository. That's the full JSON, so you can see quite a bit of information that we've pushed out there that has been rendered into the SDR. But then we've also provided a convenience link that takes us to the repository UI. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I was able to get the certificate to work in incognito mode, so that's why I'm doing that. I'm just going to go ahead. Oops, that wasn't it. Go ahead and copy this guy. There we go. There we go. Run that, and we will see that we have, in fact, assuming that it's running here. We have retrieved the test version. Open that up. We can expand it out. We see that we've got the objectives and endpoints in here that we provisioned. So there's the first objective with its endpoints, so on and so forth. So with that, I've taken my 15 minutes of time, and it's time for me to hand over to Julie Smiley at Oracle so she can show what Oracle has done downstream with the content that we pushed into the SDR.
Great, thanks, Brent. So I'm just going to quickly go through first just one slider with the build out, explain what we did with the Nurocor content, and then I'll hand it over for the demo to my colleague. So really what we're going to be demoing today, again, is how we extracted that set of study definitions that Nurocor provided to the SDR. We're going to extract that from the SDR to automate the data collection build within our Clinical One platform. So Clinical One is a modern platform. It was really built from the ground up, and we follow an API first strategy. So every action that a user can do in the UI can also be done through APIs. So for this showcase, what we're really focusing on here is using the designer APIs to automate the study build. Like I said, we're going to focus just on data collection. However, we do have all capabilities on the platform that are just basically reusable microservices. So although we're just focusing on data collection for this demo, we also have randomization, supplies management capabilities right now, and we have many other ones, in various stages of planning and development for the future. So that includes things like the trial management and data management services. Now, on the platform, each of these business capabilities also use shared platform services. So your study design, even your entire time and event schedule, all that configuration, your security, access to data, downstream and reporting and analytics, all of that's available on the platform, and it covers all of the business capabilities. And then we also have a digital gateway service for easily configuring, reusing, and monitoring your integrations in addition to that. So for the digital data flow, what this approach really means is that there's only a single integration to the SDR for the full end-to-end study setup and data flow, since it all applies, it applies across all of the capabilities on the platform, not just EDC. So you're not designing a study in your data collection system and then in your RTSM and then again in your trial management. It's one design of your study and it's shared across all of your different business services. So what that really means is as the scope of this initiative grows for the digital data flow project and the content within the unified study definition model and the SDR, as that extends into other areas, again, this is just the MVP release of both, the value really will increase exponentially within our platform because, it will take very little effort to do things like, in addition to data collection, to do things like selecting and activating your sites or scheduling your monitoring visits or generating SCTM data sets, because you kind of get it all for free just by pulling the study definitions once. So before we jump in the demo, I also really wanted to quantify what we were able to achieve so far with just this MVP release of the USDM and the SDR. So we have some study build benchmarks already for Clinical One. They're based on just building a study completely from scratch. You have your specifications, you're not reusing anything, you're just building from scratch, right? And using those benchmarks, we measured the time it took to build out the different object types from this version in the SCR, from what Nurocor sent, versus what it would have taken to do that manually based on those benchmarks. So overall, using the SDR to automate, even in this first version, it was still 25% faster than building manually. The only reason it wasn't more is because we couldn't automate the form builds. The full definitions for forms with items, code lists, and rules, they're not available yet in the USDM, and therefore they're not available in the SDR. So without that, even with having to manually build the forms, just getting the visit schedule and the visit to form associations, that still saved 25% of time in the build. So, that's pretty awesome, but obviously gives us a lot of room to grow as well. Now, we also have done, as Brent mentioned, integration with them in the past, and they can provide those full definitions. Now, we didn't do it for this POC because we really want to demonstrate where we are right now with the SDR, but based on that POC we did before and that integration we did before, you can get to all that automation, right? So you can have, with those full form details and everything, and in addition to the scheduled activities and all those details, you can get to, and we are targeting a 99% savings in study build. And we know that that's actually realistic and possible based on what we've done in integration with Nurocor before. Now, keep in mind, this is only really focusing on the actual build time. Obviously, there's other process type steps that happen during study build, like your UAT. So we're not counting that in here. We're really talking about the sitting down and building and those sorts of things. Now, we know this level of automation. We've already been able to approve that with a direct integration to Nurocor, and we can continue doing that. We can do that with other study builders, study designers, MDRs, whatever, even just standards, spreadsheets, if that's what you have. But we really feel like, the SDR, the USDM should have that full level of detail as well. And the reason for that is, if we don't have that in the USDM and we can't get that from the SDR, we still end up with one-off point-to-point integrations with different extensions for every vendor. So to have that within the model and have that within the study definitions repository and APIs, being able to get to that level of detail, that really helps all of the vendors, not just us, build like a single adapter to the SDR without having to have one for every single point solution. So we still feel like, there's a lot of value there now, but there's still room for improvement and growth as the project progresses as well. So now I'll hand it over to my colleague Marcia, and he'll demonstrate what we actually did.
The login page of Oracle Clinical One. I will sign into Oracle Clinical One. And we'll show you this study, which starts with 400. If we go to the settings of the study, we'll see some basic attributes of the study. We'll focus on study title and study phase. And if we look at how this study is currently built right now, it has a version in the draft container. And if I want to open the study design for this, I can see that it has currently only 4 forms and no scheduled visits. So this right panel here is empty. What we want to achieve is to have all the visits created, pulled out from the SDR using the SDR APIs and have those created here, and also the rest of the forms created and associated to the visits. Now I'm gonna start a simple console application, which should do that. What this small application does is to connect to the SDR using the SDR API, get the data, then with that data, it updates the study attributes, like I said, the title and the phase for now. Then the application has been able to see what the visits are in the SDR, and it identified these 6 visits here. Then the rest of the forms which were not previously created in Clinical 1 have also been created. And the last part, the most important one, is that this application currently creates the visits, and yeah, seems like I have a small error here. Let's have a look what it has produced. So first, if we look at the study settings, we see that the study title has been updated, and also the study phase. And we can also look in the design, yes, and we can see what objects have been created here. So we can see the other 20 forms that have been created. They are empty at the moment with only 1 default field, but the rest of the other forms have the fields. In the right panel, we can see the visits that were created, baseline being the first visit. It was set as a screening visit. Then the week 4 is also created and scheduled after the baseline visit. Also week 8. There should have been also the other visits, but yeah, due to that error, we don't have them. What's interesting is that we could also calculate some days between the visits, and also set the visit schedule between week 4 and baseline. And if we look at these visits, we can see that the forms have also been associated. This small icon with the 24 number here represent that thing that the forms are associated to the visits. So I think this concludes my demo. What we can do next with this design is to move the version from the draft container to the testing, and then start actually enrolling subjects into the study and move on with the visits. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcia. So if you can stop sharing for a second, I can show that real quickly before we open for questions. So again, just going back in, and now I'm logging in as a admin user. So if you have a study designer that then needs to go in and start testing it, or you're a CRO and you have clients that you want to be able to go in and do their user acceptance testing, you can do that. So I can do the same as he did, go in and be able to put this into our testing mode. But before I do that, I have to assign sites, and I have to have a testing site or sites, however many I want, and it has to be to whatever version. So because it's not available yet, we have to go look at that design, right? And we can move that over, and maybe you see I don't have the permissions to do that. Are you able to drag that into testing mode?
Yeah, sure. Doing it right now.
Just let me know when it's done.
It should be in study mode now.
Okay, so let's try and assign that test site to that version. And now we see that version 3 that was just created, and we're going to apply that change. And so now I can go in, as if I were a data manager or study builder, or whoever does it in your organization, to go in and start testing that. And this will just give you also, kind of an insight into what that looks like now. So I can go into my baseline visit and I can just start my form entry. And so you can see all those different forms that we had and all the data entry, different types of data types and things like that. And if there were rules or anything, all those would apply here as well. And that was it. Just wanted to show you kind of UI wise what that might look like to a normal user, not a designer, just so you can kind of get some insight into what that looks like. And again, really time savings there to do it using the SDR, even with this first version. All right, any questions for us for Nurocor on what we did here?
It looks like there's at least one in the chat. Julie, does the SDR have sufficient information to actually create the study in Clinical 1? The parentheses, demo showed an update to an existing study.
It does to an extent, like I mentioned on this slide when I was going through that. It's the first MVP version of both the USDM and of the SDR, right? And so, whatever was done in the SDR, including the APIs and everything, was to match, to the level of detail in the USDM. So right now, the USDM, you can put in a link to wherever you're storing those CRF definitions, so you can get to that full level of detail and get to that. But we wanted to kind of show what was actually in there right now. And like I mentioned before on the slide, like we really think just so you can do an adapter that can work with any other vendor, right? So you're not doing point-to-point integrations. We really feel like that as that USDM grows and the SDR grows, that it should be extended to include that level of detail as well.
Yeah, I would echo that. We feel that's essential for the USDM to move forward. We're looking forward to the next version beginning to include that level of fidelity, because that information is something we cannot push it into the SDR. All we can do is push the visit and activity matrix.
Any other questions? All right, if not, I really appreciate the time, and thanks again to Nurocor for working together on this and just the opportunity to participate.